How's it going, everyone? It's Javi from Weather Sunshine. Today is March 22nd, 2021, and today we're obviously going to focus on the next potential major severe weather threat that could impact the southeast later this week. And we'll also talk about the potentially major snowstorm that could happen in the upper Midwest states, as well as a potential major wind event that could happen in the northern portion of the United States, as well as the heavy rain threat that's possible as far north as the Great Lakes region or the Northeast. But before I begin, make sure to subscribe if you want to see more weather accounts. Make sure to like if you like this video, and make sure to turn on post notifications if you want to see even more weather accounts. So as we begin by taking a look at the GFS model at this time, and you see that for the most part we are mostly dry. However, that will quickly change later today once a low pressure system does form down, and it forms at to the point where it's at 992 millibars, which is quite formidable. It isn't the strongest storm in the world. However, it's enough to bring a decent amount of precipitation through the Midwest and even some areas of snow, maybe towards the western portion of this storm where the air temperature is just cold enough to support some snowfall accumulating, or I shouldn't say accumulating, but reaching the surface. So if we continue to move forward, you see that there's a large area of rain. However, there isn't going to be enough unstable air to make it a major severe weather threat. Maybe a slight chance of severe weather on the eastern half of the storm, where there's a little bit more warm air to hold more water vapor, which could help support some convection for severe thunderstorm activity. However, for the most part, this low pressure won't really bring much of a severe weather threat, as it's mainly just going to bring precipitation throughout the Midwest and maybe some snow showers in the extreme northern portions of Minnesota, but it won't be much of an issue overall, this first low pressure system. But moving on to the next one, the one that I'm gonna focus on in this video, since it has a much bigger potential to impact a lot more people and to be far more impactful. If we take a look at the trough right now, you see it's just a decently sized area of snow extending through Colorado and northern New Mexico. However, the key thing you want to pay attention to with this trough is that there's a lot of cold air behind it, and that will set the stage for an unstable environment right around the southern Midwest states, right around Texas, and that could set the stage for some severe weather to occur in the southeast, especially towards Texas, Louisiana, and extending to Mississippi and Alabama, and this could extend further northward later during the week. So if we continue to move forward with the forecast, you see that there's going to be just enough unstable air to induce some thunderstorm and rain shower activity. However, there are definitely some differences from the GFS's with this run compared to yesterday's run or the runs days before, because now it seems like GFS is slightly less lenient on bringing as potent of a severe weather threat, which would definitely be good news. We don't want to see any sort of major impacts from these severe storms, which could be life threatening at times with some tornadoes. However, there's still a good possibility that some sort of severe weather threat will happen in the southeast, and since both the major computer models have been persisting on that idea that we're going to see some severe weather in the southeast, I think it's becoming more likely, especially since we're now approaching a forecast range where the computer models do get a little bit more confident. However, the bad news is that both the European and the GFS model still have some major differences regarding the forecast, which I'll talk about in just a second. But taking a look at the GFS model, you see the low pressure system will move right along this jet stream dip and we'll move further northward. And another thing that's interesting is that compared to yesterday's run, now the GFS model is taking the more westward track, where it turns northward a little bit more westward than initially expected, where it would in yesterday's run it was a little bit more eastward. So in this scenario, though, for those in the Midwest, especially in Wisconsin and Iowa, you should experience more impacts than initially expected with the westward track, while those along the East Coast should miss out. Well, I shouldn't say miss out, because you definitely will experience some impacts from this low pressure system, although it's going to be far to the west, at least the core of this low pressure system. But since this storm is so expansive and since this storm is so lengthy, the rain showers are gonna extend to the east coast. So just because the low pressure system is well far to the east of you guys does not mean, I mean, to the west of you guys does not mean you won't experience any impacts in the northeast, because there's still that possibility of maybe a heavy rain threat, especially in the extreme northern portions of the northeast once this storm eventually heads eastward, just above the United States border. And we do see some convection occurring along the tail end of this, I'd say, cold front, which could create the chance of some severe weather along the east coast of the United States. So you don't want to underestimate this just because it's moving to the west. However, I will say that the impacts might be a little bit less for you guys when it comes to maybe wind or rain, since obviously the center of this low pressure system will be well far to the west of you guys. So for now, for those along Great Lakes states and the Ohio Valley, this is something you want to pay attention to more closely, because now the computer models are more confident that this is going to take the westward track. However, in terms of the strength of the severe weather threat and in terms of the strength of this storm overall, there are definitely still some major differences, which is definitely something I don't want to see, because it really slows down the time frame when we really do get confidence with the storm, when both the main computer models are pretty much still in pretty big disagreement, even when we're only around 3 to 4 days out, where the confidence does get a little higher. When both the main computer models are still in disagreement, pretty big disagreement when regarding the potential strength of this storm, there's still a decent or a good amount of uncertainty. So unfortunately, I can't give a fully confident forecast like I want to for you guys, despite this event being only around 3 to 4 days out at this point. At this point, I'd expect to give a more confident forecast for you guys, but since the computer models are in disagreement, I can't really do that just yet. But let's take a look at the GFS surface space CAPE, which gives a good representation of how much available potential energy there will be to create those thunderstorms. So if we take a look at it, you see that there's some capable potential energy throughout Louisiana and Mississippi, which could induce a slight chance of severe thunderstorms within the next 48 hours from this first trough that's going to move through. On the tail end of it, there's going to be just enough unstable air to maybe create some potential energy throughout Louisiana and Mississippi. If we take a look at the storm prediction outlook, day 3, you do see that there's a marginal risk of severe weather. While that isn't large by any means, that's still at least something you want to keep in mind throughout Louisiana and Mississippi, as there's a slight chance of severe weather. However, the worst of the severe weather will obviously be more ahead once this second trough moves through, where we do see a much higher risk of severe weather come right around Thursday, where we do see the potential energy as very high at this point. It's in the yellows, and what that pretty much means is that the capable potential energy is around 2,276 joules per kilogram, which is quite a lot of potential energy for the atmosphere to work with to really create some severe weather, as there's a lot of lift in the atmosphere as a result of how much unstable air there is. If we continue to move forward, you see that potential energy eventually moves a little eastward along with the storm, and even when the low pressure system is well to the north, we're still going to see that potential energy linger through the southeast, and this could eventually affect the Carolinas maybe later during the run, where we do see some potential energy extend even further up northward. And keep in mind, this is just the GFS model. The GFS model is currently taking the weaker scenario compared to the European model. While I wish I could show you guys a cape of convective available potential energy map for the European model, unfortunately we don't. The European model doesn't have that map, which is unfortunate, because it will give a good idea of how much convection is going to occur in the southeast, which will give a good idea of how much severe weather would occur. But But even looking at the precipitation map, it really gives a good idea of how powerful this low pressure system is expected to be from the European wall, where we do see that millibar pressure drop rapidly down to 983 millibars, and this is capable of very strong winds. So if you're around the northern Great Lakes region or even the Northeast, you need to watch out for that because this could definitely be a major wind producer. And what's interesting is that with the latest one now, the European wall is leaning towards bringing this storm, taking the storm to take a dramatic shift to the east rather than just drift off far more northward, which would affect the northeast states a little bit more, which is definitely interesting. It could bring stronger winds and a longer duration event for you guys in the northeast. So that won't be good news for you guys since it won't drift off to the north. But you see that the storm is quite strong. And when we see a storm strong like this, it typically means that there's a lot of unstable air. And I think that unstable air could potentially create a bigger severe weather threat than what the GFS model is forecasting. And that's definitely worrying, especially since a stronger storm typically means we'll also get stronger upper level winds, which could induce a tornado threat. So there's more unstable air in the European model, which means that I'd say more likely than not, we're going to see a pretty strong severe weather threat come right around Thursday through the southeast, and then it could extend as far north as the Ohio River Valley. Can't rule that out at all. And maybe portions of the mid Atlantic, maybe North Carolina and Virginia could get impacted. And who knows, maybe portions of the Northeast. However, I do think that's less likely at this point since there isn't going to be enough warm air or air temperatures as warm as, let's say, the southeast, where it's able to hold as much water vapor to create a very convective environment in the northeast, or an environment that's convective enough to create a severe thunderstorm. So as a result, I think it's less likely the northeast will experience severe weather. However, the southeast should definitely prepare for that as it's becoming more and more likely you guys are going to experience a severe weather threat from this storm. So in terms of what I'm forecasting regarding the severe weather threat and who has the highest risk of severe weather, you obviously see that the states, which include Arkansas, Louisiana, Texas, Mississippi, Alabama, and even the panhandle of Florida, are the most likely to experience a severe weather threat. So you guys need to stay prepared. It's better to be safe than sorry, and I think more likely than not, some sort of severe weather threat will occur. How strong it will be, that remains to be seen. It really all depends on how far south that jet stream dips to create an unstable environment, to create a ton of convection. And then just to the north and east of this area, we do see that I listed this area as a possible severe weather threat. I do not expect the instability to be as strong in the regions in the lighter red, which as a result will limit the potential of severe weather since there's less convective available potential energy, but there's still certainly that possibility. And then in the yellows, it's less likely. I'd say it's unlikely, but I still wouldn't rule it out. And to keep in mind, the forecast is subject to change. And since both the European and the GFS model are still in pretty big disagreement regarding the strength of the low pressure system, there's still a lot of questions to be answered regarding severe weather, so we need to keep a close eye on it. And another thing I want to point out is that there's a possibility of some major snow in the Midwest thanks to how strong the low pressure system could be. Again, if we take a look at the European model, you see that the storm is quite strong and it isn't too far from the freezing line. And if the cold air just moves far south enough, we could see a major snowstorm in our hands in Wisconsin and Michigan. As of right now, the European isn't expecting that much snow. The GFS model is expecting a decent amount of snow. So we just have to wait and see how much cold air there will be located in the Midwest. Really all depends on the next jet stream dip. And yeah, just pay close attention to this because I wouldn't rule out the chance of potentially blizzard conditions from this next low pressure system. So keep in mind if you're in Michigan, Wisconsin, and even those further southward where you might experience some wintry precipitation even this late or even during the spring season technically. So keep that keep a close eye on that throughout the northern Midwest states. However, another big threat that I'm worried and might be the biggest worry of all of this is the rainfall threat. Where if we take a look at the rainfall forecast over the next 5 days, you see that there a large area of Mississippi, Alabama, and eastern Louisiana is forecasted to get close to or over 5 inches of rain, which definitely could induce a lot of flooding. I'm worried about flash flooding, and if you're near a river where it's close to overtopping its banks, you need to pay close attention to that and just make sure to stay prepared in case of a flood because there's certainly a possibility. And I'd say more likely than not, a flood threat is likely throughout the southeast, so you need to keep a close eye on that. But yeah, guys, guess that's it for this video. I thank you guys for watching. Make sure to subscribe if you want to see more weather content. Make sure to like if you like this video. Make sure to turn on post notifications if you want to see even more weather content. And I hope you guys have a good day.